Hi everybody, welcome back to Toons Reviews. Today we're going to discuss 5 fragrances that I have worn over the past decade and continue to repurchase new bottles when I've emptied it. Keep it tuned. So I think that the true definition of enjoying a fragrance is when you can come back to it time and time again, and when you've emptied a bottle, you'll purchase another one, or a backup, or 2, or 3, or 5. And that enjoyment resonates in such a way to where you can pretty much create a signature scent. And I think for those of us that have bigger collections, it's a bit more difficult to just say I have one signature scent, right? Like for me personally, I probably have like 5 to 7, but it makes it much easier to narrow down a top 15 or a top 10 to just keep for life, and I could easily get rid of the rest. Now, that's not to say that I wouldn't miss some things or that I would continue to enjoy the ones that are missing if I still had them. But I'm just saying that it makes it much simpler to come to terms with the fact that there are ones that I have loved reoccurringly over the last decade, and I know that deep in my heart that there are simply ones that just resonate so much on a so much deeper level than a lot of like these newer releases that I do enjoy, but I don't have all these memories that are cultivated and emotional attachments. So that being said, let's talk about 5 fragrances that I've worn over the last decade that I continue to wear. So I'm talking like I discovered these when I was 19, 20, and have worn them all the way through to being now 31 years old, and have a lot of memories attached to these and a lot of very, very fond experiences that I've had through my metamorphosis as a man. So there's only one designer on this list, so we're going to get this out of the way. Now, there are quite a few designers that I still wear that I've worn for a decade. You know, Dior Homme, the original, Chanel Allure Homme Sport, maybe Versace Port Homme, if that's been around for a decade, Chanel's Egoist, Platinum Egoist. Those are all fragrances, Dior Homme Intense, that I've created a true love for wearing. Now, a lot of those I may not own in this present moment, but would probably get a bottle in the near future because they are great fragrances to this day. But this one is one that I recently picked up again after going through my 2015 bottle that I just finished up, and this is La Nuit de l'Homme, and this is a, I believe, 2017 bottle. And there's all the hoopla on the internet about formulations and, you know, the hysteria that goes behind that with fragrances like La Nuit de l'Homme and Dior Homme Intense and Juventus, and the list goes on. The fact of the matter is, these fragrances are reformulated, and it's due to there being ingredients that people may have allergic reactions to that they discover over time, so then they have to reformulate them, or maybe prices jump up exponentially on certain raw materials, etc., etc. This is, I will say, one of the few scenarios where it is pretty drastically different from the version that I had from 2010. My 2010 bottle or 2011 bottle was super potent, super intense, lots of spice, lots of cardamom and vanilla, and almost more of an apple pie leaning sort of makeup smell. Now this version, it seems to me, is a lot more lighter and a lot more lavender based. So there is that, but there's still that cardamom there's still that vanilla there, it's still a very enjoyable scent. But I love La Nuit de l'Homme. I love it. If I could get my hands on a couple bottles from the earlier days, without paying the exponential ridiculous price, because I'm not paying $500 for a 2-ounce bottle of La Nuit de l'Homme. It's not happening. But, you know, if I could find one for, you know, 100 ml for $150 or something, I'd probably do it. But this one, just brings back a lot of memories. Lots of nights going out to the bars or clubbing or whatever, because this is one that I wore a lot when I was around 21 years of age. And yeah, a lot of good times were had wearing Allow Me Alone. And I still love this fragrance to this day, and it's still very modern, and people still love this. So check that out if you've not. Next up, let's talk about the fragrance that everyone can see right in the front here that most people can probably really kind of resonate with and relate to. And this is Juventus. As you can see, I have a tester bottle without the cap. I purchased a couple of bottles of this in the last, I don't know, maybe 2-3 years. I bought I think 3 bottles at once. I don't remember what variation this is because that's how little it matters to me. But I do know that I have one S01 batch because that is my favorite batch. It's got a bit more smokiness to it, a little bit more birch, a little bit more leather, and I believe a Y01, and then I don't know what this is, to be honest, I don't remember. But they're all a little bit more smoky. And I noticed very early on, because I did a couple splits of Juventus, of the 250 ml flacons when it came out, and I've owned probably half a dozen 4-ounce flasks of it. And then recently, a couple of these 100 ml bottles. So yeah, Juventus, what can I say? I mean, it's not my favorite creed. You know, Royal Oud, Spice and Wood, Old Millesime Imperial, not that new shit that's an abomination. I prefer all those over this one. And even, depending on the day, old variations of Silver Mountain Water as well. I really do find that one fairly unique and I really enjoy it. But it's not to say that this is bad. It's not to say that, I mean, they're just all great, to be honest. They're all great, wonderful scents. Now, marketing and the way that they have cultivated this brand into being exponentially overpriced is another topic entirely. I mean, I wouldn't purchase any of these retail, ever. Never. Just wouldn't happen. The only reason why I own so many bottles of Creed is because I was getting them for like $150 for a 4-ounce flask. You know, the only reason why I went through so many bottles of Royal Oud, at the time they only had 1.7 ounce bottles available, is because I could get them for $130. You know what I mean? Like I've gone through a dozen bottles of Royal Oud. That's how much I love them. You know, Royal Oud should be on this list, on this list as well, because Royal Oud was a signature scent of mine for, you know, the better part of a decade, as well as Reflection Matte. But I just had to keep it to 5. So here we are with 5 that I know I've purchased bottle after bottle after bottle. And Juventus is one of those things where I would resonate with it. I would enjoy it. I would put it on and feel a whole lot better, a whole lot more confident. And then it would kind of fall off. And I guess I was kind of like a little bit of a hipster or punk rock or whatever in the way of thinking that it annoyed me that it got so much popularity, and then I stopped wearing it. But then, of course, you come to realize that really that popularity is only within the fragrance world, because anyone that I know in Rochester, New York, has no idea what the fucking Juventus is. You know, Juventus, what's that? Some kind of sex position? So I don't think that it's one of those things where I allow for that kind of thing to bother me anymore. I mean, there's a reason why fragrances become popular. It's because they work so well. But Juventus is one of those ones where I have tons of friends that are dudes that love this stuff. And again, you know, it's one of those fragrances where it goes back to me being like 21, 22 years old and wearing this a lot. Going out all the time wearing this, loving it. The huge name that it's made for itself. I was there from day one, you know, buying this when it was first released and just seeing what all of the talk was about. And you know, I remember people like John Pegg, the owner and creator of Kerosene Fragrances, this was his favorite Creed at the time, you know, when it came out, and he wanted a bottle. This was when he was a reviewer. So, I mean, everyone loved this stuff. The only one that didn't was Mark from Rooms Away. He rejected this hard at first. But I think that this is still a modern, wonderful men's fragrance. I just have a lot to say about their marketing and how much things cost and the ingredients and freaking batch variations with Creed in general. But yes, so another one that is just phenomenal and that I will continue to purchase throughout the years, I'm sure. Okay, next up is Dolces in Fundo by Profumum Aroma. Profumum Aroma is one of my favorite houses of all time. This is one of my all-time favorite fragrances. This is in my top 5 easily, and I just adore it. This is a very moist, sweet, orange vanilla cake, and it's just so gorgeous, and it cuts through that air. It's very, very dense without being overbearing, if that makes sense. It's almost like you're projecting a giant cake cloud, but it's not thick. So this fragrance really reminds me of me starting to come into my own as far as like aesthetic and personality and starting to love myself. I know that might sound kind of like stuffy, you know, talking about these things, but yeah, I mean, the reason why I love this so much is because I really started to cultivate these wonderful memories with people that had like-minded aspirations and goals, and really we all started to work together and made these things happen on our own as a joint unit with the same goals in mind, and it was just a really beautiful experience. So this is one I've gone through at least half a dozen bottles of, and probably 2 or 3 of the travel sprays. I love this. I'm always going to have a bottle of this in my collection. It's like pure happiness and joy. So I highly recommend Dolces in Fundo if you have not tried it. It is a beautiful vanilla gourmand. Check that one out. Next up here, I actually just did another video including this fragrance. This is good old Bond No. 9 New Harlem. Yeah, what can I say about this? This has been with me through a lot of change in my life. When I went to University at Buffalo for a year, this and Tom Ford's Costa Azura and Carner Barcelona's El Born were the only 3 fragrances I had with me. They were the only ones that I wore for a year. And my El Born actually was only like maybe a quarter of the way through the bottle that I had for the entirety of the year, so I didn't use that one very much. It was mostly New Harlem. Oh, hi, Molly Sue. Hey, what are you doing? You stop that. I love you. New Harlem was my go-to for nights out, and Costa Azura was my daily driver, so I wore so much of this on such a regular basis. It was actually probably one of the only blips in time where I really only wore like 2 or 3 scents for the majority of a year, or maybe even a little bit more than a year. So New Harlem, so many wonderful experiences that I had wearing this, meeting new people, getting new perspectives, becoming a better version of myself. And so this fragrance is always going to be something that I resonate with hard, and I love this scent. I'm so happy they brought it back. So check it out if you have not. It's a beautiful maple syrup and coffee and lavender fragrance. So if that sounds good to you, check that one out. Also my top 5 favorites of all time. And last but not least, we have a unicorn. I notice whenever I talk about these on my channel, they get barely any views, you know, whenever I do a review of a Slumber House fragrance, but, you know, it's got to be discussed. It's probably my favorite house, if not top 2 or 3 anyways. And this is my favorite fragrance from the house. This is the first fragrance that I ever tried from the house, and this is called Or. Or, oh my goodness, I found this fragrance when I moved to my first apartment on my own. I was 20 years old, or maybe, 19 or 20. And I was just maybe a year and a half into collecting niche fragrances, and I stumbled along and found Slumber House. And this was at the time when they had bottles that had little marbles in the bottles. and Pear & Olive and Or, and I think Jackie were available at Lucky Scent, and I really was attracted to the note lineup of Or because I'm a huge gourmand lover. I didn't actually end up trying Pear & Olive until maybe 2 years ago, and Jackie I don't think I had tried until maybe 3 or 4 years ago. So Or, tried it, fell in love with it, sold out. It wasn't until maybe a year after that I got to experience purchasing this fragrance. And let me tell you something, this continues to be in my top 5 favorites of all time. It's a dusty, boozy, oak and cocoa fragrance, and it is just so cathartic to me to be able to sit here and wear this and think of where I was 11 years ago and the boy that I was, and just be so full of gratitude and joy for where my journey has led to this day, the person that I am now. It's just a wonderful experience for me to be able to have. And again, this is just such a warm and cozy fragrance that just makes me melt a little bit inside. So if you ever get your hands on a sample of Or, I hope you thoroughly enjoy it. It's such a cathartic fragrance for me. As are a lot of these fragrances that are beside me here. They've all been with me throughout, a decade's worth of experiences and, love and loss and metamorphosis, and such an interesting experience to have, to be able to pinpoint these memories with the spray of a fragrance. So I hope you all enjoyed. I hope you're all doing well out there, and I will see you all soon. Keep it tuned.